Hi everyone and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Intuitive Psychology Podcast. I am your host, one of your hosts, Jill Ritchie, and I'm joined by
Sarah Gregg,
your other host. We are so pleased to be back here in the studio recording this episode, and in this episode we are going to be talking about inner child. Now I'm so sure that if you're listening to this you will have an element of understanding around inner child, but we're just going to dive a little bit deeper, and hopefully with the intention that you get some takeaways and aha moments from this episode.
Yeah, I think inner child is one of the most powerful pieces of work that we can do. And if you're working through your inner child right now, we see you, we understand where you're at. It can be a wildly emotional roller coaster that can involve the aha moments, a disentanglement of the past, a letting go of old responses, and also elements of, guilt, shame, especially if maybe some of the inner child work is related to your parents or caregivers. It's often like quite a confusing time as well for us. So if you're kind of immersed in all of this, or maybe you're on the periphery and you're just about to dive in, we want to reassure you that on the other side of doing inner child work really is where we let go of previous conditioned responses to triggers. We change how we respond to the world, and ultimately we step more into our authenticity.
Yeah, and for me, inner child is, whilst it can be emotional and triggering, it is just so healing. And your inner child is just you, and it's your innocence and your beauty. And think of your inner child as a child, right? A child, a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, 7-year-old. Whenever I do inner child work, my intuition shows me the part or the age of the inner child that I need to communicate with, and sometimes it's different. And actually, sometimes there's multiple my inner children, the collective. So sometimes it's a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old, and then there's the 13-year-old me that comes in all at once. But what I've really learned is, and what I feel really helps people when they're diving into inner child, is to see that version of you as a child in their innocence. And that really softens it. It shouldn't be something to be feared, because it is not separate from you. It is part of you, and what you resist persists. I think with inner child, it is the biggest part of the work. It's not the only work, but more often I would say from my one-to-one coaching times, and even in group work that I've done with people, it always comes down to this thing happened when I was 5 or when I was 7, or this memory of being in a playground, or this memory of my mum and dad when I was younger, or being told something or seeing something, or witnessing something. It comes down to that child version of you and what you made it mean. And the narrative that you took on of what life was and how you were supposed to be, or who you were. And we take on these identities, and so much of our future of who we are and how we show up in life is a byproduct of that thing, or those things that happen to us. And it's not always it doesn't always have to be a huge traumatic event. It can be a belief, something that a parent said, a friend said, a teacher, an aunt, an uncle, something. It can be anything. There is levels of traumatic events. There's big T trauma, small T trauma, but it's what you made it mean that shaped you. Yeah,
I think it's really important to make the distinction between child mode and adult mode. And when we are a child, we internalize ways to be loved and accepted. And it's those internalized messages that are often misconstrued, that because we're a child and we're not fully formed emotionally, even our logical brain isn't there, we don't have the toolkits to kind of decipher and understand what the world around us means. We have this openness to this external world that we're rapidly trying to navigate. And as a result of that, we can internalize messages that create distortions. And those distortions last with us in the present, and they impact our future, like you said. And it can be as simple as, feeling that you weren't seen or heard and understood as a child. And maybe that looked like your mum and dad, or your parents or caregivers, whoever they were, coming home after a really busy day's work. They're processing and navigating their own stuff. And you're there kind of like eager to share your work or your news for the day. And they're quite dismissive. Right, okay, right, later. I've heard you, later. Or be quiet. And what we internalize, is maybe a message of, it's not safe to take up space. I need to be quiet. I need to look after. Maybe you responded in a way to like your mum's needs. Oh my goodness, when mum isn't happy, that doesn't make me feel good. So your personality starts to shape and navigate the way, because as children, we have this need to be loved and accepted and feel safe. And we have different survival modes of doing that. They ultimately keep us safe. So one strategy might have been, I know how to meet my mum's needs. I see her and I recognize her when she's stressed, and I will find tactics and tools to please her, to make her feel good, because when she feels good, then she has the capacity to give me the attention that I need. And so it's this subtle but gentle process of self-abandonment that occurs over time, that then we unconsciously repeat these patterns out in our lives. Maybe we attract in friends, partners, work colleagues who have similar attributes, to your mum, that replay it out in a way where you are continually meeting the needs for that person. As long as you meet their needs, then you're safe and you're accepted and you're wanted. But the minute you voice what you need, there's maybe like a disconnect, or there's a judgment element there. And this is why inner child work is so important. And this is why intuition is the key to it. Because in that scenario, when we step back and we look at it in adult mode, like logically, you can see that isn't the truth of the scenario. There's elements and fragments of truth, but it wasn't about you. It was about your mum and what you made that mean. And intuition enables you to see and apprehend that truth, not only on that logical level, because logical and conscious awareness is only one small part, but it's processing the emotional awareness of what that is that's still living out and playing within you.
I honestly feel like how we as adults live our life and how we're playing at life is people say to me before, do you think it's all down to inner child? I would say most of the time it is, because it's not down to inner child. It is what happened when you were a child, how you're... Like, well, what was your map of the world? Like, what did you know? Because when you're born into a set of programs and conditions, and also like your attachment style is formed. Then you learn to. So if you are like more anxious attached to meet needs, or if there was a lot of shouting in your house, or there was a lot of you being dismissed, you can become more avoidant, and you see that how you're living your life right now, I believe, is massively down to what happened to you as a child. But the beauty of that is it's not about saying, oh, well, that thing happened to me and then that's it, that's just the way I am. And it should never be seen as something bad or something that we should avoid, because we say this in a lot of episodes, Sarah, it's part of you. It's not separate from you. And if there's repeated patterns happening in your life, or you're feeling disconnected, or you're feeling unsafe, or you're feeling judged, or you're feeling like there's just something not quite right, be willing to just investigate, like, okay, I wonder where this might have come from, and how can I go in and start to work with the inner child. And there's so much that you can do with inner child, but you can reparent those parts. You can communicate when we drop into our intuition, and we do this. This is one of our one of our techniques within intuitive psychology is the inner child piece. And we spend a lot of time on this, Sarah, because you don't often know what's going to come up. So there needs to be a lot of care, consideration and time and space, and a lot of nervous system regulation work, because a lot of things might have happened that you've blocked out. So you've got to be willing to be ready and have a regulated enough nervous system so that if it steps forward and a memory comes back, to be able to hold that, or have someone who is qualified and experienced, being the key, that can hold that really safe space for you, knowing that it's not going to hurt you. It might feel like it is, but it's already happened, right? It's in the past. How do we alchemize that? How do we allow our body, our magnificent body, to process that emotion, allow it to move through and out, creating more space for your true authenticity, who you want to be now, what you want to bring into your life. Because if you're not, you're just trying to put more in you're more in, and there's not enough space.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And this was a big reason why we included inner child work inside the master diploma. And, you know, we've talked in a previous episode before about authenticity in business, and it didn't feel authentic to us to approach coaching purely from that present future perspective. We are very much part of that second wave and second generation of coaches who are recognizing that you can still maintain coaching as a distinct profession. You know, it's not therapy, but there needs to be a recognition of the past and how the past projects in the present and restricts us from entering our full potential into the future. And when you do inner child work, it's important that you, if you're going to embark on this journey, maybe you've done an element yourself, but you want someone to hold the space for you, which I would highly recommend, especially when it comes to inner child work. If you want someone to hold the space for you, go to someone who has an accreditation. Look for someone who is a professional in the space. You know, our coaches are accredited at the master diploma level to the highest level in the entire industry. And before they even go into inner child work, they have that professionalism. They have an understanding of the client's past. You know, they know when to introduce it and when to draw back. And that's really, really important. And we've also being the embodiment of inner child work as well.
Oh yeah. I mean, honestly, that changed the game for me, because I would still be doing, I can honestly say, if I had not done my inner child work, I would probably not be here in this business doing what I'm doing right now. Because you having the awareness of why I kept repeating patterns, it is so empowering. Yes, there's emotions that come with it, but you have the deepest level of understanding about yourself. And so you should. Like, it's you versus you, man. Like, you should. Like, it shouldn't be something to fear, because, again, it's not separate from you. Why are you going to push away part of you? It's when you have the awareness, then you can take the action, heal those parts, bring in so much compassion and love. And the beautiful thing about inner child is you're so much less critical of a child. Like, you would never say to a 4-year-old, oh, you're so bad, shame on you, blah, blah, blah. Like, when you get that, and when you're able to, like, go into memories or sit with your inner child and ask your inner child, what do you need? And wait and allow that wisdom from your inner child to tell you what they need, what they want. Oh, it is. And it's a world within a world. And it is so beautiful. I've yet to meet someone that doesn't do inner child, that the tears don't come. But it's tears of love. Yeah. It's of emotion. It's of healing. It's like I said, a world within a world, where all of a sudden you can hold that part of you in so much love and compassion and non-judgment, whereas we tend to judge ourselves as we're older. But the thing is, even for me doing my inner child work, I understand why I've done things as an adult which I'm not proud of, but it actually came back to the thing that happened when I was younger, that then I was acting out as an adult
Yeah.
because I didn't feel safe.
Yeah.
And it felt safe to do the thing that I was doing, even though it wasn't cool.
Yeah.
When I understood that, that was freedom for me. That was a light bulb moment. And being able to not only understand that, communicate with that part, give it what the root cause, right? The root cause was that, but actually to then go in underneath that, which we teach in the diploma, it's not just about the root cause. Knowing's not enough. It's how do you then go underneath the root cause and go to the unmet need? What was the unmet need? And believe you me, you can actually go in and meet that need for that inner child. You can give that inner child what it needs. You can finish that story. You can right that wrong. And that is the bloody power of inner child work, Sarah.
It really is. Like, you know, when you were talking, it was really interesting. You said, like, you know, you go into the inner child and you're able to view it, you know, yourself as a child in that innocence. And for me, that was really deeply powerful because I felt like in my house, I had to grow up really fast. So I felt like an adult for most of my life. So when I look back at different memories, there can be an element of judgment there about I should have reacted differently, or I should have known better. And when I went back into inner child, I could see, oh my goodness, like I was 4, like I was like that level of responsibility that was indirectly and inadvertently, and I think largely unintentionally placed on me to adult, you know, to be in that environment. That was so healing for me to see it like through that lens, to actually recognize, wow, like I was so young whenever that happened, but I didn't feel it. You know, I didn't feel it because I had to grow up quite rapidly. And getting to the, like you said, like the root cause, like there's always been a conscious kind of knowing and understanding of like how I grew up, the environment that I grew up in. But there wasn't that level of like the need that wasn't met. And I think that was because the walls were built up. I prided myself on being, I'm strong, I'm resilient, I'm independent, and I don't need anybody in my life. And if you're coming into my world, cool. But if you mess me about, you're out. Like, you know, I prided myself on that.
Yeah,
but,
I get it.
But
Same. Underneath
that and underneath those walls was ultimately like a real fear of abandonment and rejection. That fueled a lot of unworthiness. You know, that's my real fear, is like, that comes from the inner child, is like, I'll be abandoned or I'll be rejected and I'll be left. And that kind of like crippling, like loneliness, like feeling that's within you of like, please don't leave me, please love me. It's heartbreaking to look at, but it's also incredible to look at. It's the light and the dark at the same time, because when you go there, you see yourself in deep vulnerability. You know, you see that part of you that replays out in every aspect of my life. I look at that and I look at the strategies that I protected myself from abandonment and rejection, situations that I've put myself in where I unconsciously knew I would be opening myself up to that abandonment and rejection, and replaying out those responses. And as you look at it and you go a level deeper, you know, to the unmet need and what does that need, there then comes a point when you are able to go to the emotional reactions, like the trigger point. So, you know, really small things, like for example, for me, I can distort the truth and think if I ask for something that I want or need from someone, I'm at risk of abandonment and rejection. So it's really hard for me to say this is what I need, because I grew up really knowing how to meet other people's needs, and if everybody was happy on the outside, then I could kind of feel safe and content on the inside. So if I want to say like I want to take a day off, or I don't want to do that thing, that felt wildly unsafe for me. Like even those everyday interactions. So the emotion would come up of like, oh, I want to say that thing, but I don't want to say it. And what I would do is I would suppress the emotion and push it down, and then go into my usual response, which is please perform perfect, make sure everything that's okay is okay. And then ultimately build up resentment and frustration because people weren't listening to me. So, experience as a child, not listened to, or my perception, not listened to, not kind of responded to, not really feeling like I was acknowledged. What do I replay out? Situations that I literally am setting myself up for through my coping mechanisms to not be seen, not be heard, and not be acknowledged because I'm not actually speaking what I want. So it becomes like this self-fulfilling prophecy. And the healing point, the deeper healing point comes whenever you can feel that emotion, sit with it, and inaction is key here. This isn't about, especially if you're dealing with abandonment and rejection, the key is not to go like, I release you, I release the emotion, you don't need to be here. It's just sitting with it, and it's actually not doing anything. Just sitting with it. Oh, I see that emotion, I see that discomfort. I'm just going to let that be. And then once that moves through, because it will move through, once it moves through, then I'm going to act, and I'm going to consciously choose a different way. So I'm going to choose, even though it feels uncomfortable, even though my voice might shake a little bit, even though I might feel even quite emotional saying, I don't actually like, I don't want to do that thing that you've just suggested. I want to do something else, even though that might cause my voice to quiver and it might be imperfect the way that I communicate it. I'm going to consciously make a different choice to change, and I'm going to show myself in adult mode that I can hold my safety and give my inner child what they need and what they didn't have. And honestly, the world doesn't fall apart.
I know.
The world doesn't fall apart, and you feel so alive and so empowered, and it gets easier with every step until there comes a point when you can't imagine that it was any other way than the way that you experience it now.
I love that. I love that you say adult mode, and I think sometimes it's like, do it for your inner child. Do it for them, because often people will struggle with, they don't sort of do it for the version of them who lives and breathes right now, but they would do it if a child asked them. Do it for your own inner child. Your own inner child has this need. What is that need? It's you, right? So you know what that is. So do it for them, because they deserve it. And I feel like if you don't, you will keep playing out those versions of you back then in adult life. That's what happens. You keep repeating the same patterns. You'll play it out. You'll tell yourself a story. It'll get distorted. You'll think it's truth because you're feeling it in a bodily level. You're like, oh my gosh, like you were talking about abandonment. My thing is always, I'm not safe to shine. I'm not safe to do that thing. I'm gonna, and that's it. It's like if you don't, because remember, your inner child is a child. They don't know what's best for you. They don't. And I think that is really important, that they are seen, heard, understood, communicated with, loved beyond measure. But they also aren't an adult. They don't think the same way as an adult. And it's really important that you don't let the inner child run the show. So you think, oh, well, I'm suppressing it, but you're actually letting your inner child run the show, and they're not mature enough to do that. Like, work as a team. Work as a team.
I love that. And I think it's important because I think inner child work above kind of a lot of other things, it's the easiest way to see intuition and action, because there's obviously not a little tiny version of you that is living somewhere inside your body. Like if we put you through a body scanner, there's not a tiny little Sarah
with pigtails
and oh God, some of my photos with a really awkwardly cut fringe, that my mother's clearly taken the scissors to, she's not in there. But the inner child is your intuition, literally in action. It's the personification of the memories that you have as a child and the emotions that are have built up over a time frame. Some of them will be a specific memory. Mm-hmm. Some of them won't be. Some of them will be a collection of things that have amalgamated into this personification that enables consciousness to really easily work with it. It's not easy to work with multiple timelines and versions of you and go back to a specific event. It's much easier if we can, for consciousness to go, oh, intuitively, I know this relates to my inner child. I can see this younger version of myself. We have different techniques, but even communicating to your inner child how old you are, mm-hmm. and letting them know and recognize that you're an adult, that you can now parent them, reparent them through this. it is safe for them to kind of be a child.
Yeah.
To be a child, to go off and do and to, you know, just have a different response, because otherwise the past just continually replays out in the present over and over again. And it's, you know, we talk about like the unconscious, and sometimes people can like fear the unconscious. Oh, I don't want to go into my unconscious. Like, what will I say? What if there's kind of like a horrible thing kind of waiting for me? The reality is, you view your unconscious every day.
It's already playing out
continually
in your life.
manifesting
for sure.
every day in your life. If you take a step back and you look at maybe relationships that aren't working, habits, behaviors, frustrations that you have in your life, all of those external manifestations are an internal and are internally inside your world that are manifesting in the external, that it's already your unconscious playing out, and it's that conscious choice to choose to see it and to go, okay, I'm going to choose to make a different decision. Like, I'm going to choose to respond to this scenario in a different way. And when we do things in a different way, we get a different result, we create a different reality, and we're able to step into our full selves.
We're gathering evidence, and straight away I'm thinking about inner child as you're saying that, Sarah, and it's like, actually, for someone listening to this, like, we always say, like, have a bit of caution around inner child. Like, it doesn't mean that you can't go and investigate your inner child and tune into that right now. By all means you can. You just need to go online. There's so much on inner child. We always say, like, work with someone who's experienced, because they can hold that space and they have the knowledge and experience to support you with it. But if you did want to just even tune into your own inner child, maybe you do some journaling around, right, okay, these are my repeated patterns. I really struggle with anger, with comparison, with, you know, whatever that is, with trust. The chances are there's something to do with your inner child, and really, really dropping into that. And before even going into your inner child, like we've said this in previous episodes, taking some deep breaths, dropping out of your mind, making sure you're not in the story, you're not in the narrative, but you are in your body, and you're asking, okay, what do I need? What do you need? What do you need right now? And the word might be safety, it might be space, it might be trust, whatever that is. And that's a really good step towards trying to see, okay, so what was the unmet need? You know, where was that need not met? What did you need as a child that you didn't receive? And this isn't going back to your parents. And this is where the shame and the guilt kicks in. This isn't about blaming your mom or your dad or your caregiver. Take that out of it for a moment and just look at you. What did you need and what did you not get? What did you really want to say? What did you need and that you didn't get? And then you'll get an answer. And then understanding, as soon as you get that answer, you'll probably be able to put the pieces together and be like, okay, that's why that's playing out in my life. And it pieces it all together, doesn't it?
It does. And only we can meet that need for ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Only we can meet that need for ourselves. And when we do, we begin to rely less on the external world for validation, for reassurance, for safety. And we realize that it all comes from within. So those strategies that we had and the pressure that we put on ourselves, that if everything is okay in my external world, then I'll feel okay. We can't control the external world no matter how much we want to. And if we do choose to control the external world, we do it to the detriment of ourselves. We have to self-abandon. We've got to morph into a people pleaser, a perfectionist. You know, we've got to build the walls up and not let somebody in. That's the only way to control. And when we do that, we don't let life fully in and we're not fully ourselves. When you do this work, the ultimate goal and aim is I can meet my need for myself. Sometimes I'll do that exceptionally well. Other times when I'm drained, tired, stressed, I'm not going to be able to do that in the same way, to the same level. And that's time for me to kind of like top up and give myself time and space for what I need. It's not going to be perfect all of the time, but what happens is you focus less on the external world needing to meet your needs. You don't need other people to live up to your expectations, and you don't feel the pressure to live up to theirs either. Yeah. You feel like this freedom just to move through the world as you are, meeting people where they're at, seeing through that veil, that illusion, and just trusting yourself and having that deep sense of safety.
Yeah, that's it. Inner child all the way, baby. Okay, another really important conversation, and just that invitation for you to notice where you're at right now. Notice if there are repeated patterns, if you're struggling with trust or connection, safety, whatever that is for you. Just get curious and
get curious.
Yeah, get curious around your inner child.
Do the work, but then importantly, bring that conscious awareness. This is where we talk about active and applied intuition. Once you've activated your intuition, your inner child has communicated with you what they need. Consciously keep that at the forefront of your mind. Maybe they need love. Maybe they need acceptance. Maybe they need strength, whatever word, safety, connection comes forward for you. Just say to yourself, okay, how can I keep safety or how can I keep trust at the forefront of my awareness? And then when that trigger response comes in and there's that habitual pattern of, going into your coping mechanisms, whatever they look like for you, try to just have a little pause. Feel the emotion, let the discomfort be without interruption, without talking over it, just let it move through. And then say, okay, how do I bring trust to this scenario? How do I bring connection? How do I bring safety? And let that activate a different choice, because I'm going to be brutally honest here. You can have a ridiculous level of self-awareness. You can know all about your inner child and what it wants to communicate and have a whole big story and playbook. But if you do not change your response consciously, nothing is going to change for you. Nothing is going to really change for you. Awareness plus action is where the change happens. Okay. So how do you bring that into your conscious awareness, and how do you actively start to give yourself what you need, make different choices, make different responses, and give yourself the self-compassion that it's not going to be easy and you might get it wrong sometimes.
Yeah. Give yourself the self-passion as you would a child.
Yeah.
That's it. Amazing, Sarah. Okay, thanks so much, everyone. And we'll see you all in the next episode.
Bye.